Today we're going to be looking at stashes and cheap plays for your Dynasty Fantasy Football rosters, moves to make, trades, and everything else. Before we dig in, though, you need to click that subscribe button right now. We're looking at Dynasty values every day. We're looking at this rookie draft class every day. I got a fun video on Shedeur Sanders coming up. Should be released within 24 to 48 hours. A lot of editing to that. You want to stay tuned for that. Click that subscribe button, though. Stop missing out. But Elijah Mitchell has entered the chat here. RB69 in terms of value, but we're a chief. So we're getting that chief privilege. But what are the indicators that we may or may not want Elijah Mitchell, whatever you want to do, as a cheap prospect? We're going to watch him through training camp. We want to watch the Chiefs through the NFL draft. Sometimes these hordes, these lottery ticket plays are through the NFL draft, or through training camp, or maybe even beyond that, maybe even a few years old. Really depends, but you have to identify that first. Short-term lottery ticket asset here. Chiefs are also showing their hand here. Isaiah Pacheco, Elijah Mitchell, they like fast running backs. They like explosiveness. They want something like that. Maybe somebody like Basil Tootin in the draft. Maybe something like that to look at. So there's more indicators than just, oh, they signed running back X do this. There's other things to look at. They like athletic runners. Tutu Atwell got a little bit of a bag this offseason. Wide receiver 94 will be on the field. A guy that's not talked about a lot. A guy that's not heralded. That's why he's a stash play or a bottom of the barrel play. 5.8 points per game last year. 3.6 targets per game. Cooper Kupp is gone, but he's been in this offense for a long time. He has been there for a bit. He will be used to stretch the field. He'll be getting downfield. He's a guy that can blow up on any given week. How do I like him? I like him for best ball a little bit as a cheap play. The Rams are going to be in some matchups where there's going to be some firepower. That's for sure. He'll get downfield. He's not going to be consistent. We know that. Puka Nacua and what they got with Devontae Adams, it's not going to be a consistent flow of targets, but he's going to be a splash play guy out there on the field. And he has shown that. And when he was hitting a little bit last year at weeks 3 to 7, he was giving you something. We're on the back end of a roster. You don't love it. It ain't winning you weeks, but it got you by if you're money balling, DFSing, getting cheap assets. Cheap asset here that might get you more than expected. Cooper Kupp is gone, but Cooper Kupp was gone most of last year. However, Demarcus Robinson is gone as well. Tutu Atwell might be a sneaky play. Cade Stover. Watch what the Texans do in the draft at tight end. It is deep at the tight end class. But a 4th round selection, a guy working his way up the depth chart. If you're looking for a tight end stash, here's one that you can probably get on the cheap. If you're looking for a cheap tight end, offense is good. If he's out there running reps, you might be getting opportunities to see some targets. We got 11-point game to his name. Guy to pay attention to. Rico Dowdle's now in stash territory. RB55 in the rankings. His stock has dropped. But the thing is, this team likes to use 2 running backs. The Carolina Panthers, not the Dallas Cowboys. He's a Panther now, if you did not already know that. Chuba Hubbard's the man. We love Chuba Hubbard. But the thing about running backs is they get banged up. And maybe it's a 2 to 3 to 4 game stretch. But we got a guy here that's proven to be productive. The Panthers stated a million times they wanted to use 2 running backs last year. They said that going into the season. They wanted to make it a competition between Chuba and Miles Sanders. They wanted that, but Miles Sanders was so bad it couldn't be a competition. I made a whole video on that going on into the season, going over stash plays and everything like that. Rico Dowdle is an upgrade, so you might be getting some opportunity here that allow him to be a good baseline money ball lottery ticket option to back into your roster that you know is talented. Also, this is going to stabilize this offense from going too heavy into the draft. They got Jonathan Brooks there, but the running back position is deep this year, so you never know what's going to happen. Diami Brown is a sneaky wide receiver going to the Jaguars. Sexy profile coming from North Carolina. We go to Washington, nothing happens. Nothing happens. So nothing might happen with the Jaguars. Wide receiver 90 range means more than likely nothing's going to happen, but he's cheap. And if you're looking for cheap wide receivers, he landed in a situation where they play to their strengths. There's some openings here for like wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 to get some reps in an offense that's looking to be dynamic. They want to push it downfield. So A-Dot should be good. He's good at getting downfield. He's good at making splash plays downfield. This could be the sneaky play that comes right out of our nose right here that surprises us once we get middle of the year. Khalil Herbert going to the Colts. Jonathan Taylor usually misses a stretch of games every year. Herbert kind of does the same thing. But the thing about him, he's explosive. Everybody ran to the waiver wire and redraft for Trey Sermon last year. Trey Sermon hit about once out of 3-4 games last year. Herbert has the potential to give you like 1 out of every 2 behind this offense. Maybe 1 out of 3 to 2 instead of 3 to 4. Like a little better results. More upside, more explosiveness. We saw that with the Bears. Herbert could be a guy that could be a sneaky option down the line. Not a guy to depend on, but as a Moneyball play, back end of a roster option, Mac Hollins going to the Patriots. The thing about Mac Hollins going to the Patriots, it really depends on how deep your rosters is. Wide receiver 140, that answers that question for you. But the thing about him, every team he's been with, he's had a run where he was somewhat fantasy relevant. Just look at the chart here, 2022, 2024, 2021. Different teams, just having a little run or seeing a run where he's getting workload to where you got to pay attention to him. He's a good wide receiver. He's very sound. He's very nuanced. He might be in play middle of the year. He might have a run of 3 games or something like that. But again, you got to call it out. You got to call that out. That could help you win some weeks in your season. Christian Kirk going to the Texans, wide receiver 64. This offense is in need for talent at wide receiver considering injuries. And also Stephon Diggs is gone. Christian Kirk here could get peppered with short targets, especially starting off. A veteran wide receiver. They traded for him. They wanted him. They wanted to make that move. Right now is a good time to try to get in if you want to. He's also stash option territory, wide receiver 64. He could be a solid backup wide receiver for your team that you can use in a pinch. He could be a guy that you could trade off if he starts seeing volume, more volume than expected in this offense, because this offense can produce volume. And also free agents, newcomers into this system tend to transition well and quickly into this offense. We saw this last year with Diggs, Joe Mixon, veterans, they did that pretty well. Potentially with Christian Kirk, Isaiah Davis. I just want to throw him out there again. You're looking at an RB3 that could be used as an RB2 on his team if something happens to Breece Hall. And they're going to use 2 running backs if something does happen to Breece Hall. He will be getting opportunity and workload. We do like Braylon Allen, but he's cheaper than Braylon Allen by about 30 spots at the running back position. That being said, Isaiah Davis, if you're looking for a stash play, if Breece Hall goes down, he will be getting some workload. He will see an increase of some value. Maybe you can flip him. You could have flipped him maybe weeks 13, 14. Highly unlikely in Dynasty for a good bit. But still, he was cashing when it comes to volume and fantasy production, especially week 14. But he was getting looks on the field. They're going to use 2 running backs. Both running backs are going to give you some production when Breece Hall is out. Isaiah Davis, super cheap. Jordan Mason going to the Vikings. Looking at this depth chart, they're going to draft another running back, more than likely, to fill out the back end of this roster here. Aaron Jones at the Packers, that when he finished off there, injury history. However, we were strong with the Vikings last year. Jordan Mason, when he was healthy with the Niners, we were strong. We're probably going to get a run of games. Good for the back end of your roster. Not good as a dynasty asset for the long term. Good as a potential point getter for your Dynasty Fantasy Football team. Just strategize appropriately. Audric Estime, we're waiting to see what the Broncos are going to do at the running back position in this year's draft. We did not do anything as a rookie last year. A good between the tackles grinder at Notre Dame could lead to that, giving you a little bit of production in season during his second year. That could potentially happen. I don't expect him to be a good stock. I don't expect people to really be climbing to get Audric Estime, but I expect him to get affected by the draft. But I expect him maybe to be an asset on the back end of your roster that might be able to turn something out mid-season, attrition hits, or maybe he gets an opportunity, runs with it a little bit. Like, I think there's going to be some opportunity for him to get opportunities in this offense somewhere down the line. Still, Joe Milton. Never forget about Joe Milton. Watch the NFL draft. He's got some talent here that could allow him to get traded somewhere middle of the draft. This quarterback class is very sus. They got a talent here where they're not going to be able to use him really as a backup. He's hoarding too much value right now to just sit behind Drake May. They're going to ride Drake May. And Joe Milton's here. They can pedal him off. And the NFL is indicating they do not like this draft class. Joe Milton, hell of an arm. has made a little bit of an impact when it comes to plays at the NFL level, especially preseason, some moments in season. Joe Milton's a guy to pay attention to. Joe Milton's a guy to pay attention to. Be on the lookout for him. Sean Tucker is a very talented running back prospect. I do not expect the Bucs to go heavy in the draft at running back considering what they have, considering defense is going to fall to them in a lot of these rounds. But again, they could make that play. But Sean Tucker is a good RB3 for any team in the National Football League. Watch him. But if I have any of the Tampa Bay running backs, I want him as a cuff just in case one goes down because he would be seeing more opportunity. And they're going to use him. They want to use 2 running backs at the same time. And there's a lot of plays out there where they'll be rolling out both running backs. Sean Tucker is an RB3 with RB2 consequences. Wan'Dale Robinson. Now we got Russ back in action. Might be an option that we draft Shedeur Sanders. Wan'Dale Robinson getting a lot of short targets, and that should remain the same. 10.7 points per game, 8.3 targets per game. You're going to see volatility due to a short average depth of target, but still, when you're chasing volume on the back end of your roster so you can get production, this could be a guy to look at, or should be a guy you should be looking at. Marshawn Lloyd is a stock. He's a stock option on the Green Bay Packers with a lot of upside. Due to the size of just athleticism, he was hurt last year. We did not get to see him last year. Maybe something turns out in training camp. You're watching him during training camp. You're watching the Packers during draft. They could bring in another running back of consequence, but odds are they're probably going to roll with the stable Emmanuel Wilson as well. He's on the roster. They gave him a 1-year deal. He's very fluid. So if something happens to Josh Jacobs, they're going to have a committee. They're going to have a tandem. Manny Wilson was solid last year as a backup. In redraft, we looked at him as a potential stash play because Josh Jacobs, if he went down, Manny Wilson was going to be the next man up. And if you already had him and he was giving you 12 points here, 10 points here, 14 points here, that was good enough for some teams to get by if they were hurt at running back. Jalen Wright, flash in the pan running back. He's a rocket, man. He's probably going to give you a Will Fuller effect at the running back position if he gets his opportunity. We're going into year 2. They spent okay draft capital on him. Watching the Dolphins see if they draft another running back because all teams could potentially do that. But we got speed to burn. And that could be something you want on your team. A good stash option. But he's kind of like an expensive stash. Should be roster type dude. But again, when I do the stash videos, people will ask about players in this range of value, so I'll sprinkle a few in. A.D. Mitchell, same reason. A guy that should be rostered, but for some Dynasty gamers, he's a stash, and we'll ask about him. The Colts quarterback position is wonky right now. You're just going to have to see it through. They got some good talent at wide receiver. If he was in this year's draft, we'd be loving him. We'd be all over him. Good size of just athleticism. Create separation off the tape. He was creating separation last year. One of the top separators in this rookie class from last year. A.D. Mitchell is a good stash play to see what happens at wide receiver. Jacob Cowing is too, due to how ambiguous the 49ers are, especially in the passing game, especially with all the changes. Jacob Cowing is a guy that might pop off, might see some opportunity, might get some run or whatever happens later on down the road. Might get some training camp buzz too, because it's very ambiguous right now. There could be some changes. Roman Wilson, we talked about him a few times, but we're waiting to see what happens at quarterback. I do not see this team fueling multiple receivers, but could be a guy down the road that could be a money ball, splash play, best ball play, whatever, in the right moments, depending on what happens with George Pickens on the long term, if they decide to get rid of him after the season, or if they decide to move on, or what's going on with the long-term version of the quarterback position. DK Metcalf on this team forever and always, and I do not expect a wide receiver 3 to turn up, but again, we're looking at cheap stashes just in case. He killed it at the Senior Bowl. He got okay draft capital. He was hurt last year. Fluid route runner. Could be a good outlet in the passing game for this team, especially if they start cooking a little bit more in the passing game due to quarterback changes. Kenny McIntosh, back end of the depth chart of the Seattle Seahawks. The thing is, the injuries are a revolving door for these running backs on top of the roster. Zach Charbonnet, Kenneth Walker, revolving door of injuries every year. Every year. Kenny McIntosh almost had his opportunity last year. Kenny McIntosh is just a stash just in case. That revolving door just starts to spin a little bit more. And it could happen. It's a trend. Last 2 years, it's been a trend. It's been sticky like that. Something to pay attention to. He's cheap. What can nuke him? 2025 NFL draft stacked at running back. This team has proven, however, it was a prior regime to keep going running back, but this team has proven that they do like to run the football, so that's something to look out for. Austin Eckler, if you're looking for cheap production, here you go. If he's healthy, you're rolling him out. If he's not, you're worried about it. He's also almost 30 years old, so don't be doing this if you're rebuilding your dynasty team. Here's some quick stash options, some quick cheap discount plays for your dynasty rosters. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. Well, thanks for watching. Catch you on the next video.